Welcome back, everyone. This video is going to be about vertical strokes and single independent strokes. Now, I want to emphasize the fact that I'm on the floor here for two reasons. Reason number one is to highlight that you don't need a marimba, really, to start learning the basic mechanics of six-mallet playing. All you need is a soft surface. You don't have to invest $5,000, $10,000 into getting yourself a marimba, especially when chances are you can find one at your local university or school. Now, second of all, in this video, it's very important that your mallets are coplanar with one another. The mallet heads are. So, by being on the floor, I want to ensure that, yes, your heads are coplanar with one another. And then when you lift it up, hopefully you keep the minimum amount of tension in your hands so that you can keep them coplanar. Now, if you're too loose, right, then your mallet heads are going to droop like this. So your middle mallet is going to be above the other two. And that's not what we want if we want clean double stops instead of flams. Now, the opposite problem, if you squeeze your hand, right, this middle mallet's going to be below your inside and your outside mallet. And this is important. This concept is important for playing middle independent strokes and inside middle independent strokes, or sorry, inside outside double vertical strokes, excuse me. Anyways, I just wanted to remind you of that. Now, all of that I just want to say is not to say that you should be squeezing your hand, right? You shouldn't be tense when you play. You should be as relaxed as possible. Keyword as possible, right? If you're too relaxed, then your mallets aren't going to be in line with each other. But if you're just relaxed enough, you should be fine, right? You don't need to exert any extra energy than the minimum required. Now, let's move on to actually playing now. We're going to start off with triple verticals. So, good thing about extended burden grip, and really any extended four-mallet technique, is that a lot of the things are going to be the same. So, a triple vertical is the same as a normal Burton double vertical, four-mallet double vertical. So, you just raise your wrist. If you see, my wrist is twisting. Just like that, right? You're just going to raise your wrist and let it drop. That's all you're going to do. Now, that's pretty quick. Hopefully that doesn't need much more explanation than that. Let's keep moving on. I guess the only thing I should say is that, obviously, you can take your time. Make sure your mallets are coplanar with one another. Yeah. So, now let's move on to double verticals. So, this can either be between the inside and middle mallet, the outside and middle mallet, or the inside and the outside mallet. So we're going to start with what I think is the easiest of these three, which is the outside and the middle mallet. The way this is going to work is you're just going to, kind of like a normal Burton grip stroke, you're just going to turn your hand like this. It's kind of like doing a triple vertical, and then you're just going to turn your hand instead of going straight down. So you're just going to turn your hand. Just like this. Right, and one thing I want to emphasize here is that if you turn too much, you're only going to get this outside mallet. And that kind of problem is more apparent with your inside and middle. And I'm sorry, I misspoke. It's not really about the, how you turn, in so much as, is where you focus your turning. As for the inside and middle, you can potentially you can get a good sound if you turn a lot, right? If you turn just enough to get this, to do this inside stroke, and then just add the middle mallet in, right? But it's a lot easier to think of it as just two mallets. If you take this mallet out and we just think of it as two mallets, right? This is how it would be. This is what you want to feel. You want to feel the median point, which is right here in between these mallets. That's the point you want to pivot around. That's your axis of rotation. Your axis of rotation is not necessarily this extra mallet, although it can be, but that's just not the easiest. Right, so as you play faster, one thing you might notice is that this inside mallet is actually touching the base of the thumb, and as I stop, it's going to go back to this so that your mallet head's going to be coplanar. Now, why is that? That has to do with the concept of the pseudo-fulcrum. So I'm going to get rid of these mallets for clarity here. So when you look at the inside mallet, what's actually happening is this, right? So for slow tempos, this is fine. This works, right? The fact that there's no fulcrum is okay. It doesn't really impact it. At faster tempos, you kind of need a fulcrum, right? You can't do this motion without it. So the thumb kind of migrates here and forms a pseudo-fulcrum. It forms a stable contact point so that this mallet isn't like flopping around everywhere. However, it's not a full fulcrum because obviously there's nothing pivoting here, right? It's just a wrist motion. Now, that's just something I want to bring awareness to because one kind of thing you might do is for the inside middle stroke, your thumb can sometimes relax. And that can form your pseudo-fulcrum. However, I would also caution against that in some sense because really, as you saw there, you can learn how to play strokes like that without forming a pseudo-fulcrum. And when you have a pseudo-fulcrum, if I want to play a middle mallet stroke, we'll soon come out to find that you do need a fulcrum in order to pivot there. And without it, it's just a lot harder, a lot more tense. So if you're only playing inside middle, it's a potential option you can explore. But in general, I would not recommend it. I would recommend just learning to play with normal fulcrum and playing your inside middle like that. One other problem that may occur is this kind of flamming, right? Because there's no fulcrum on that middle mallet, it's a bit more free than your other two mallets. So this obviously we don't want. I just want to point that out. But also, it's not undesired totally, right? Because for other things, such as arpeggios, it makes it very desired. It's just in our case for double stops, it's not good to create a double stop sound with double verticals. That's what I was trying to say. Anyways, that's enough of that. Let's move on to inside and outside double verticals. So inside outside double verticals, what you do is you have to pull the middle mallet out of the way. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to lift it up with our index and place our thumb kind of there as support. So I'm going to zoom into that. Have our index kind of curl underneath and then our thumb tucked as support. So either one can hold it individually, but together they help stabilize it the best. So then now, you'll notice it's the same motion if I bring this middle mallet back in as a triple vertical. The only difference now is we're just going to remove this mallet. Right? So that's the way you do inside-outside strokes. Now, next, we're going to cover the independent strokes. Sorry about that. I was just readjusting my grip. Kind of hard to do this with one hand, but independent strokes. Okay, so you have three independent strokes. Your outside independent, your middle independent, and your... I'm sorry, I messed up the order. Your inside independent, your middle independent, your outside independent. Okay, so how do we achieve this? Well, like triple verticals, your outside and inside independent strokes are very similar to Burton grip. Okay, so it's just a rotation motion. So just try this. If you just rotate your hand just like that, that's the motion we're going for. That's all it is, just a rotation, just like a normal Burton grip. Now, where things get a little weird is when we look at the middle mallet. So the middle mallet, if you remember in the beginning, I was talking about squeezing and how the middle mallet is below the other two mallets. And actually, that's what we want in this case. Not the squeezing, but having the middle mallet come below the other two mallets. And in doing that, it's going to reach first. Because there's no way we can get this middle mallet. I mean, there's no way you can rotate to get it to come into the surface before the other two because your mallets are all coplanar. So what we have to do is we have to essentially if you imagine a finger control kind of motion, we're going to pull up with this finger. So I'm going to zoom into that, pulling up, this motion. So when you look at the rest of your hand, what that does is you'll see the middle mallet just kind of reflexively is going to go down then. It's going to be lower. And notice that I'm helping this motion by turning the wrist, right? One important thing is if you only use your fingers, it's a super tense motion, right? We need to help this motion out with our wrists, and we need to support it with our wrist so that we are less tense, more relaxed. Obviously, all great things. So this middle mallet stroke is going to take the most effort to do, right? It's the most different from probably anything you've done before, but it's rewarding because when you master this middle mallet stroke, you truly will get full independence in all ways, and that will show up later when we do combinations of strokes, when we do permutation exercises, when we do arpeggios, things like that, right? So once again, I'll just show the middle mallet. Remember, it's fingers pull up, wrist helps push down. There's a slight inward motion you can kind of see with the wrist here. That is so that this outside mallet doesn't hit as well at the same time. So in summary, what we have is triple vertical is just a wrist motion. Our double verticals are also just wrist motions turning inward or outwards, making sure that you're in line with the median as your axis of rotation. So that median is your middle point between those two mallets, in case you've forgotten. Your inside-outside, your inside-outside, you're going to pull up the middle mallet just like that with your thumb and your index. For your single independent outside, you're going to rotate. If you're single independent inside, you're going to rotate. And for your middle, you're going to use fingers to pull your inside mallet up, and then you're going to rotate slightly inward to support your motion and also to ensure that that outside mallet doesn't hit. So my hope in that now that you've watched this video, hopefully to completion and all the way through, is that you now know how to execute all of the basic strokes for six-mallet playing. And this is really what's going to take up a lot of your time in the beginning, trying to get the mechanics, especially for the middle mallet independence. It's a little weird. Good thing though is truly middle mallet independence, it's more an advanced literature. For most introductory literature, you only really need your outside and your inside, because most composers know that playing with the middle mallet is a skill that takes time to develop. So yeah, I wish you all the best. I hope that you'll join me next time when we talk about expansions, contractions, and eventually when we talk about applying these strokes in conjunction with one another. Happy practicing.